It's Thursday, November 20th, 2014. From Slate, it's The Gist. I'm Mike Pesca. And now the Spiel. One podcast to unite them all.
It is the internet sensation that has captured the imagination of millions.
Candy Crush? Facebook? Ferret porn? Well, yes, but she's talking about a podcast.
Apple calls Serial the most popular podcast in the world.
Now, if you work someplace, any place, and if you do something all day and everyone around you does this thing, and then you go home and talk to your family about the thing, and maybe you're covered with the literal or sometimes literal residue of the thing, it's only natural to assume that other people will have some inkling as to what your job is, just because you're so in the middle of it. So I understand coal miners might know that the public doesn't know the difference between anthracite and bitumen, but they don't have to go around defining what coal mining is to people. Now, I'm a podcaster. I do expect in some quarters people to not really understand what that is. I am not thrown if someone says, I keep hearing about podcasts. Where do they sell these things? I get that. But CBS, in this report on the morning show, is obviously talking to a different audience, one that not only doesn't understand podcasting, but might not be familiar with the concept of ears or hearing.
You know, it's being called a pop culture obsession, and you can't watch it on TV or Netflix. You actually can't watch it anywhere. It's kind of like the old days of radio, but this is on the internet. It's this podcast called Serial.
Actually, it's kind of off the internet and on your iPhone or device, but we get what you're saying. At least Jan Crawford, the reporter, doesn't think the audience will be confused by the word cereal. Here I will now read People Magazine beginning its story on cereal. This was people.com. Pronounced like the sugary breakfast food, but dealing with a subject matter far more mysterious, Serial is a podcast that has quickly captivated the world. Wait, more mysterious than Frankenberry? That guy had some mystery about him. More mysterious than Grape Nuts? That was the breakfast cereal that asked, are you good enough for Grape Nuts? What the hell was with that? There's no casually taught. Okay, I'll just say, what the hell was that? You know, if you read a lead like, pronounced like the sugary breakfast cereal, but dealing with a subject matter far more serious, you should be saying to yourself, I have stumbled onto a magazine for dumb people. The People magazine article's headline was Serial, the fastest growing podcast ever, receives backlash from murder victim's family. In it, the brother of the murder victim in Serial, Heyman Lee, her brother is quoted via a Reddit thread as criticizing those who view the murder of his sister as entertainment. So you ready for the backlash the podcast received as per the headline? Here's that backlash directed at the podcast. Although I do not like the fact that SK, that means Sarah Koenig, the narrator and co-producer of Serial, although I do not like the fact that SK picked our story to cover, she is an awesome narrator / writer / investigator, so no wonder why this podcast is so popular. Backlash! There's the backlash. There were other pieces alleging backlash or attempting to create backlash, but there was no crack to those particular whips. For such a fine piece of journalism, Serial has certainly inspired some very bad journalism. Look, that CBS morning piece I was playing before, I get it. The average age of the CBS morning viewer is 58 and a half years old, meaning that for every hip 42-year-old, you have a 74-year-old balancing her out. But still, listen to this quote from Adnan Syed's mother.
You were asleep? Yeah, handcuff him. I say, why are you taking him, He say, that he murdered. I say, wait a minute,
Wait, they said
that he killed the girl, I say, wait a minute, why are you taking me like this,
So what was remarkable about that was that the quote was subtitled. To me, it sounded like English, someone with an accent speaking English, but I get it. Let me just advance this rule of thumb when subtitling English speakers. Don't do it except if it's train spotting. Don't use the clip if it can't be discerned, and I thought that was fine. And it's also so funny how TV struggles when they're denied visuals. Here, listen to this part.
Prosecutors convicted her ex-boyfriend, also smart, well-liked, Adnan Syed. His sentence, life in prison.
The visual is a picture of Adnan next to a newspaper clipping, jury finds teen guilty of killing girlfriend. And then there's a camera swoop. It's really a rotation of the graphics. And now the pic and the clipping, boom, they're in a jail cell. If this is the state of journalism, and I've seen journalism, it is, no wonder people love Serial. Quality, human, gripping. But I do think that as I listen to the show that I am gripped for reasons entirely divorced from why most people like cereal. I like the way the milk takes on the cereal's flavor when you slurp it. No, People Magazine, that is not what I'm saying. I get the sense that people like Serial as a real-life episode of Law and Order. They like being whipsawed. They like the roller coaster. I really don't care as much about that as the things like this guy's life in jail and how the criminal justice system works and how memory works and what the psychology involved must be. I'm not saying I'm listening to it better than you or more high-mindedly. I've definitely gotten into real-life crime thrillers where I've been very invested in the issue of guilt or innocence, but those works are usually an hour and a half long. The documentary The Thin Blue Line say. Serial, on the other hand, has layers. Pink Hearts, Yellow Moons, Blue Diamonds, Great Jesus, People magazine, you have ruined a good show for me. And that's it for today's show. Andrea Salenzi pinged me from the cell tower at 6:09, but by Jay's timeline, she was putting in the papers to adopt a female orangutan, not a male chimp as Jay originally told the police. Joel Meyer, managing producer of Slate Podcasts, prefers to engineer phone calls from a Telos phoner unit that may never have existed. Andy Bowers is failing to pay sufficient attention to his duties as executive producer of Slate Podcasts because shrimp special at the Crab Crate. You can subscribe on iTunes, give us a listen on Stitcher, get our daily email, subscribe to that at slate.com/gistemail. We're on we're on facebook.com/slategist. Please give us all your theories about who did it, meaning produce this podcast. Email us at thegist@slate.com. This episode has been sponsored by Mail Kipmunk, an internet provider of clues and breadcrumbs. Mail Kipmunk, part of the Read Hearing Network. Thanks for listening. Today was the coldest day of the season in New York City, meaning bulky coats and bulky feelings on the 4 train. One guy passed out. Another guy gets in a fight with 3 different people. Imagine the chances of 3 strangers on one train who separately are just such jerks to this one poor guy. This one guy who was just rigorously defending his right not to be eyeballed. This guy actually said, "Go back to England. Maybe you'll have more room on the subway in England." I have never heard a more zingless zinger in my life. Go back to England? Yes, it happens to be a very nice country with less income inequality, but most of the mores of America. Sure, I'll go back to England.